All praises to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And peace to everyone joining me on this program. This is the Founder of Israel's Bible Studies program. And as always, it's an honor for me to stand before you on the Lord's holy Sabbath day. Now, this lesson, I entitled it A Short and Fragile Life. A Short and Fragile Life. And the reason I want to bring this up is because a lot of times, we don't really think about our life. We don't think about the brevity of our life until maybe someone passes, someone that we know, someone passes along or something like that. Then we start being a little bit more introspective and saying, you know what? I need to prioritize my life, right? And regardless of how long or how short our life is, we have to make it count for something. See, because some people, they can live a long, long time. They can live 80, 90, 100 years, but did it count for anything, right? I heard a saying before, and it was like, on your tombstone, you're gonna have a day that you were born and a day that passed, and the only thing matter is the dash in between, right? And so that's really, really what's going to matter. If you had a life filled with purpose and you pass at 35, that means more for your soul salvation. That means more to the Most High than if you had 90 years of lawlessness or wickedness, right? So I just want us to kind of keep that in perspective. And even some of the ancients thought that, life is pretty short, but it wasn't always supposed to be that way. It wasn't always supposed to be that way. And then what we consider long life, short life, it's different today. It may be you have a long life today, 80 years, 90 years, something like that. In other times throughout history, living to be 50 was a long life for some people. Life expectancy changes over time. But let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at life expectancy. And this time I'll be reading out of the King James. So let's go ahead and go to Genesis. Let's go to Genesis chapter 2. Now, in Genesis chapter 2, I'm going to start at 15. I want to read 15 through 17. And 15 says this. It says, "And the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to dress it and keep it. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat." 17. "But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die." Okay? Now, a couple things. You've heard of the term that ignorance is bliss, right? We've heard it. Ignorance is bliss. And the opposite is true. And we're going to see that in the scriptures, right? Especially when it comes to Solomon. He was just saying, knowing all this knowledge, there's vexation, there's heaviness. I'm sure some of you guys who've been following for a while, who's been awakened, who's been studying the scriptures and looking at the world through biblical eyes and looking at the things that are going on in the world and the lawlessness and the wickedness and the crookedness that is out in the world that's around us every single day, right? You look at those type of things, and because you have a little bit more knowledge, there is vexation. You are weary because you know with spiritual eyes, you see what's really going on, right? So that makes you feel a certain way. So that little saying of ignorance is bliss, it is true, because the opposite is also true, right? When you have much knowledge, there is much grief. Okay? Now, the other thing in this, and it says, in that very day. Now, we can take that a couple of ways, right? Now, on the one hand, we can say, okay, well, it says here, in that day they die. Now, we know that they did eat of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil. In that day, they didn't lie. No, but what he's saying is, okay, I'm letting you know today you will die, right? Or today you will die eventually. Because at first, the intention was for us not to die at all. Okay? And we're going to look at some of their lifespans, and we'll go from there, right? So you can look at it that way. Okay, I'm telling you today, it's kind of like when the Messiah was on the cross, and he tells the thief, truly, truly, I say to you, today you'll be with me in paradise. Okay? He was just saying that, right? Now I'm telling you right now, you will be with me in paradise, right? It's the same here. He said, I'm telling you right now, if you do this, you will surely die, right? And then there's another way we can look at it too. And again, this is not salvation threatening. How you look at it, either way you look at it is fine, right? So he's just saying, I'm telling you right now that if you do it, you will die eventually, right? Or you can look at it this other way, because there's a lot of different ways people look at it. The other way is this. There's some who believe that the earth is rather young, right? 6,000 years old, something like that, right? And so they're saying in that day, he did actually die in that day. But how does the Bible look at a day, right? So let's look at a couple of things real quick. Psalm 90:4. Now I'll tell you right now, not everyone agrees with this view, but I have to show you the other views. What you believe, that is completely up to you. This does not threaten your salvation, okay? So let's go to Psalm 90. Psalm 90. Psalm 90, and I'm going to read verse 4. Now look at what it says. Verse 4 says, "For 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday, when it is past and has a watch in the night." So like 1,000 years is like one day to you, basically, right? And a watch in the night, just overnight, 24 hours, basically. Just 1,000 years is like a day to the eternal, right? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and look at it again in 2 Peter, if you will. And in 2 Peter, we're going to read chapter 3 and verse 8. In verse 8, let's see, I'm in 1 Peter. Let me go to 2 Peter real quick. 2 Peter 3 and 8 says this: "But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day," right? So again, for those who have this young earth creation viewpoint, they say, okay, Adam did not live over 1,000 years old. So in that day for 1,000, 1,000 for a day, in that day he did die. Okay, both ways actually works. Depends on how you look at it. Both ways actually works. So in that day, he did die. Even Methuselah didn't get past living 1,000 years, right? So in that day, if you believe in this particular analogy, totally up to you. But let's take a look at something. Genesis. Let's go back to Genesis, and we're going to go Genesis chapter 5. Genesis chapter 5. Okay. And I'm going to start at verse 1. Okay. I'm going to start at verse 1. So, because we're going to look at some of these ages, how long did that they live, right? So we're looking here at the antediluvians, right? So, verse 1, it says, "This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of man made he him. Male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called their name Adam. And in the day when they were created. And Adam lived 130 years, and begat a son in his own likeness, after his image, and called his name Seth. And the days of Adam, after he had begotten Seth, were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters." People keep forgetting he had sons and daughters, more of them, right? Verse 5. "And all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died." So all the days of Adam, 930 years. He did not get past 1,000, right? A day is like 1,000, 1,000 like a day, right? He didn't get past 1,000. Either view works, okay? Because if you go back to the other view that I gave to you, after they partook of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, he began to die after that, right? Let's continue. Verse 6. "And Seth lived 105 years, and begat Enos. And Seth lived after he begat Enos 807 years, and begat sons and daughters." So now Seth, he had sons and daughters. "And all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. And Enos lived 90 years, and begat Canaan. Enos lived after he begat Canaan 815 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enos were 905 years, and he died. And Canaan lived 70 years, and begat Mahalalel. And Canaan lived after he begat Mahalalel 840 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Canaan were 910 years, and he died." Look at these cute 900, 800. Look at all these. "And Mahalalel lived 65 years, and begat Jared." So he was good for 65 years, and then he had a son, right? So having children later in life, hey, that's perfectly fine. "And Mahalalel lived after he begat Jared 830 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Mahalalel were 895 years, and he died. So I'm just stopping here just for a second. Look at all this. So these are the antediluvians, right? These are they who existed before the flood. These are very long-lived people. Now, these are not the only people who lived that long. A lot, okay, who lived a long time. They had sons and daughters, and all this is under pre-flood conditions. So I know a lot of people, they think it's kind of ridiculous. They're like, well, people don't live that long. Well, no, not anymore. And we'll see why. We already know sin is the reason why, right? But I want you to imagine something. Imagine you have some wicked people, like the seed of Cain. You have some wicked people, and they live for 300, 400, 500, 600 years, 800, 900 years. Can you imagine that much wickedness? Imagine yourself on your worst day. Imagine yourself at the worst point in your life when you had nothing but total disregard for the Most High. Just imagine, just go back to that time, before you became awakened. Imagine yourself at your most wicked, right? Now imagine doing it for 300, 400, 500, 600 years. Now imagine everyone doing it. Something to think about. Okay, so that was 17. Let's go up a little bit more. And Jared lived 162 years, and he begat Enoch. And Jared lived after he begat Enoch 800 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. And Enoch lived 65 years. So they gave him their first son at 65 years old. That's pretty amazing. And he begat Methuselah. And Enoch walked with God after he begat Methuselah 300 years and begat sons and daughters. Okay, so let's skip down. I want to go over because we know he was super old. Okay. And we look over here, let's drop to 26. And Methuselah lived after he begat Lamech 782 years and begat sons and daughters. And 27. And all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. I just wanted to point that out to you, show you how old that is, right? So we're looking at all these antediluvians, and we're going to go forward. I'm going to keep going a little bit so we can get all the way up to Noah. And Lamech lived 182 years and begat a son, and he called his name Noah, saying, this same shall comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands, because of the ground which the Lord has cursed. Verse 30. And Lamech lived after he begat Noah 595 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, I want you guys to understand something. Okay, so a couple things. One, they lived a long time. Okay, we're looking at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 900 years, right? Nobody lived past 1,000. Okay, that's one. So the Most High, either way you look at it, that part is true. But I also want you to understand that if someone is continuing to have children into their hundreds, okay, having more sons and daughters and sons and daughters, and then having some more sons and daughters, how many people can you create? How many people can? And then the polygyny was perfectly fine and acceptable. Let's be adults here. That's just how it was. Okay, so polygyny being perfectly fine, you have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wives pregnant at one time. I mean, how many people can you birth in 5, 6, 7, 800 years? How many? Because a man could have a child all the way up until he dies. Okay, so I should say, create a child, impregnate someone, and all the way up until he dies, right? So we can see how fast a population can explode, right? So we can see that. Now, if it's exploding with wickedness, the Most High has to put a limit on that. Okay, so now we saw all these antediluvians out here, all these people who lived in pre-flood conditions, and you have people talking about, oh, well, that's not possible, that doesn't make sense, this and that. Okay, first of all, you have to understand what it was like. You have to have an idea. And even though I will endeavor to paint a mental picture, it will fail to do it justice to how it probably was during that time. Okay? So we have to understand, okay, pre-flood. So one, there was no rain and nothing like that. How about right now? Would you say there was less pollution back then than there is now? compared to the pollution now, right? So there was no pollution versus rampant amounts of pollution right now. Okay. You have oxygen, the pure concentration of oxygen, okay, is at least 50 times better than right now, right? It's like 50% better, higher quality oxygen back then, right? Then how about then today? Then what about, well, I don't know, what about the soil? How do you think the virgin earth was back then? Perfect soil to grow everything you need perfectly. What do you say the food quality? How do you think that would be pre-flood conditions? The food quality out in the world at that time. What would that be like? You know, food that, you know, non-GMO, every nutrient your body needs is in your food, and your body responds to it. How about us not being a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, meaning further and further and further, further away from Adam? Or further away from Noah, right? So what about that? What about having, you know, your DNA just pretty much perfect? Because think about it. I know traditionally evolution would say, you know, the survival of the fittest, and we're just getting better and better and better and better. But to me, it seems like it's going the other way. It seems like we're living shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter lifespans. Is that not true? So how about an uncorrupted DNA? How about no disease? I'm pre-flood, no disease. So there's a lot of things for us to unpack, a lot of things for us to consider. Our atmosphere, pollution, oxygen, the ground, our genetics, the food that we ate. There's a lot of things that we have to consider. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So it could be possible, right? Now let's go to Genesis. We did 6. Let me read 6 and 3. And let's see what happened here. He said, and the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. So 120. So that's when he put the bounds of our lifespan. He said, you know what? 120 years. Because it's cool when he has someone righteous like Noah. You know, he righteous, one of the last antediluvians, but he was righteous to live, you know, on both sides of the flood, right? And then of course, you know, he has his children and things like that. But for someone to live on both sides of the flood, it's okay to have that. But what if you have a whole lot of wicked? So why do you think he had to wipe out some wicked? Because wicked was just running rampant. Wickedness, I should say. Wickedness, wicked people were running rampant. So he had to kind of cut that. He had to go ahead and turn the hourglass over and say, okay, when this runs out, you're done, right? So he had to think about those type of things. Now, he said about 120 is about the cutoff, right? Now, let's go look at something else. Let's go to Genesis 47. And let's look at verse 8 and 9. Now let's see what our forefather Jacob had to say about that. So 8 and 9, it says, and Pharaoh said unto Jacob, how old art thou? He said, well, how old are you? How old are you? Okay, verse 9. And Jacob said unto Pharaoh, the days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. So he was 130 years old at this time. Few and evil have the days of my years of my life been, and have not obtained unto the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage, right? So he's 130 right now. He's 130, and he says, you know what? Few and evil the days I have a short little life. Few and evil. Okay? Now the Most High had already said that, okay, we're going to be 120. Jacob's already at 130, and he thinks that's short. Okay, so we got to understand. It says, in Isaiah, it says, you know, even an old person will be who's 100 will be thought of as a babe, right? 100 years is not that long. 120 is really not that long. Today, by today's standards, by these biblical standards. I mean, if we were able to sit with our forefathers and stuff, the ones under pre-flood conditions, if we were able to sit with them, and we were able to sit with Methuselah and Enoch and all, and all them, if we're able to sit with Lamech and all them or whatever, we're babies. Your grandmother, your great granny, they're babies to them. They're babies. Oh, they're 100. Oh, they're 95. That's a baby. That's a child. It's all relative. So we're saying, life is short. So even at 130, Jacob thought, oh, my life is short. All right? So let's keep that in mind. It's all about perspective, right? So let's go on over to Job. Let's see how Job looked at it. Okay? Let's look and see how Job looked at it. Okay? So Job 7:7. He said, oh, remember that my life is wind. Mine eyes shall no more see good. So it said wind, like here today, gone tomorrow, gone with the wind. Very, very fragile, right? My life is very fragile. So I said it's short. Now you're gonna see that it's fragile. Right? So we're gonna look at that. So that's your Job 7:7. We're still in Job. Now let's go to 14. Okay? Now 14, I want to read 1 and 2. And it says what? Man that is born of a woman is of a few days and full of trouble. He cometh forth like a flower and is cut down. He fleeth also as a shadow and continueth not. So that does that not paint the picture that our life is one short and fragile? Just these few verses right here is short and fragile. So let me give that to you one more time. In Job 14:1 and 2. Man that is born of a woman is of few days and full of trouble. He cometh forth like a flower and is cut down. He fleeth also as a shadow, and he continueth not. Here today, gone tomorrow. A short and fragile life. I'm not doing this lesson to scare you or anything. That's not what this is about. It's to give you perspective. That's what this is about. It's to give you perspective. This is how the Bible sees us. It's a short and fragile life. We're just gonna stay in Job. Let's go to chapter 10. When we get to 10, we want 19 and 20 of Job 10. Let's do 19 and 20. And 19 he says, I should have been as though I had not been. I should have been carried from the womb to the grave. Are not my days few? Cease then and let me alone, that I may take comfort a little. I said, wow. He's like, why was I even born? He said, I don't have that long to live. I mean, I don't have that much life. So let me just enjoy the little bit that I have. Okay, so we're gonna look at this, right? We're gonna look at this, and later on we're gonna see just how long Job lived, right? But we're gonna do that a little bit later. We will get back to this. Okay, so Job is like, my days are few. I don't have that much time. We'll get to that. We'll get to Job 42. We're gonna come back. We'll circle back to that. Okay, we'll get back to that. So let's go on over to Psalm 144. So Job, he's like, my life is few. I got a few days here and there, right? So let's go 144 of Psalm. We're in King James this time. 144, verse 4. 144, verse 4. What is this? It says, man is like to vanity. His days are as a shadow that passeth away. His days are short. Shadow, right? Shadow doesn't have really substance, right? And it's as the light bends it around, that shadow's gone. Shine a little light on, the shadow's gone. It's very fragile, very short. Here one moment, gone on the next moment, right? But we're gonna stay in Psalms. So while we're there at 44, let's go on over to 39. Let's go on over to 39. At 39, I want to read, I'm going to start at 4. Let's start at 4 and 39. Lord, make me to know mine end and the measure of my days. What is it? That I may know how frail I am. Is this not pointing out how short and fragile our life is? Let's hit that again. Lord, make me to know mine end in the measure of my days. What is it? That I may know how frail I am. Behold, thou hast made my days as a hand's breadth, like right, quick as a breath, right? As a hand's breadth. And my age is as nothing before these. Verily every man at his it says, verily every man at his best state is altogether vanity. All this for nothing, right? Altogether vanity. Verse 6. Surely every man walketh in a vain show, Surely they are disquieted in vain. He heaped up riches and knoweth not who shall gather them. Right? That was verse 6, right? So we seeing right here, he said, okay, all this stuff that we're doing is for nothing. Okay, all these things that we're doing, all this running around and all that, what is this for, right? But we're going to get a little deeper into it. Verse 7, and now, Lord, what wait I for? My hope is in thee. Deliver me from all my transgressions. Make me not the reproach of the foolish. I was dumb. I opened not my mouth because thou didst it. Remove thy stroke away from me. I am consumed by the blow of thy hand. When thou will with rebukes dost correct man for iniquity, thou makest his beauty to consume away like a moth. Surely every man is vanity. Surely every man is vanity. 12. Hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear unto my cry. Hold not thy peace at my tears, for I am a stranger with thee and a sojourner, as all my fathers were. O spare me, that I may recover strength before I go hence and be no more. Okay, so he's just saying, I got a short time. He's asking to help me out. We're fragile. I'm about to go the way of my fathers. It's fragile, short time. Help me number my days. Help me realize how frail I am. All of us are. All of us are. So I just want us to have this perspective. I want us to just keep this in mind. Just keep it in mind exactly how frail and fragile we are, how short this life really is. It's always to keep it in perspective. Then, and only then, will we start to prioritize our life in such a way that it lines up with purpose and what the Most High wants us to do. And we'll get that towards the end of this, right? We'll get there. So what I want to do is I want to go to Isaiah. Let's go to Isaiah 40. We're going to go to Isaiah 40. And when I get there, I'm going to read 7 and 8. He says, the grass withereth, the flower fadeth, because the Spirit of the Lord bloweth upon it. Surely the people is grass. So he likens our life like grass, right? And 8. The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, but the word of our God shall stand forever. Look at how he compares our life, right? Look at how he compares our life. The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, but because the Spirit of the Lord bloweth upon it, surely the people is grass. So we're just like grass. Very, very fragile, easily cut down, alive for a season, and then we're gone. A short and fragile life. Again, giving you perspective. So let's go back to Psalm 89. Psalm 89. And I'm going to read, when I get to Psalm, I'm going to read 46 and 47. And he says, how long, Lord, wilt thou hide thyself forever? Shall my wrath burn like fire? Remember how short my time is. Wherefore hast thou made all men in vain? Like, is this for nothing? Look what he says. Remember how short my time is. Remember how short my time is. Have you made man for nothing? We're not here that long. But don't worry, we got our purpose. Don't worry. There's a purpose to all this. And one of the things we need to have to do is we need to waste as little time as possible with foolishness. We need to walk around circumspect. We need to be sober. That's why he tells us we should be watching. Waiting for that day. Either waiting for his arrival or waiting till you are put to sleep. Till you are asleep in the grave. To one of the two. We don't know if tomorrow is promised. That's why when we talk, and that's why you have those who get into the scriptures or something, and then they'll say, if the Lord wills, right? Now I know we don't always say that after, but your mindset should always be in a place of if the Lord wills, right? So you may not say it all, oh, okay, next Friday I'm gonna do this and that, right? If the Lord wills. But even if you don't say it out loud, that's how your mindset should be. We think about retirement and all that. Hey, if the Lord wills. I mean, hey, I want to prepare for retirement as well. Doesn't mean I'm going to make it there. Doesn't mean I'm going to make it to 65 or 70 or whatever retirement really is. Because I think I'm always do something. But whatever retirement really is. If the Lord wills. James tells us about that. Right? G 46 and 47 again. How long, Lord, wilt thou hide thyself forever? Shall thy wrath burn like fire? Remember how short my time is. Wherefore hast thou made all men in vain? Why are we here, dude? I mean, did you make us for nothing? Because you're angry right now, and I'm not going to be here that long, right? So we just got to keep that in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of the Apocrypha, right? The Apocrypha, and I'm going to go to 18, 9 through 11. The Apocrypha, and I'm going to read, or Sirach, right? 18, and I'm going 9 to 11. Okay? 9 to 11, the Apocrypha. Chapter 18, verse 9, it says, the number of a man's days at the most are 100 years. Okay? Now they're looking at it from their time, right? From their perspective, okay? What 100 years? As a drop of water unto the sea, and a gravel stone in comparison of the sand, so are 1,000 years to the days of eternity. Like 1,000 years is like a day. It's 1,000 years is nothing compared to eternity. Right? 1,000 years is nothing compared like eternity. Is what he's saying. So at this time, okay, those 400 silent years, between Malachi and Matthew, during that time, 100 years, hey, that's you lucky, you good if you make it to 100, you're good. But look at where it came from. Look at where it came down from. 969 years, and now all of a sudden, if you you know what I'm saying? If you make it to 100, you live the ripe old age now. That was Ecclesiasticus or Sirach 18, 9 through 11, if you need that. Let's keep going with our lesson here. So let's go back to Psalms 102 and 11. Psalm 102 and 11. Check the description box below. Should have all your scriptures down there so you can follow along. 102 verse 11 in Psalms. Verse 11 says, my days are like a shadow that declineth, and I am withered like grass. See, all this imagery is short. It's just showing just one. Notice everything is short-lived and fragile. That's our life. Our life is compared to being something short and fragile, easily taken away. Death is easy. Life takes time. Okay, imagine that. Death is easy. Life takes. What do I mean? Life. How long does it take us to bring forth a baby? On average, 9 months, right? On average, okay. And we're just gonna go with the average. 9 months. That's how we can create life, get it here on earth, right here in our presence, where we can, see them, touch, feel, and all that, right? How long does it take to snuff out life? How long does it take for you to lose life? We can use plenty of examples. Plenty of examples. How long does it take to build one of the skyscrapers in these major cities? Skyscraper downtown Houston, downtown New York, downtown Seattle, one of the casinos in Vegas. How long does it take to build one of those buildings? Now let me ask you, how long does it take to destroy one? See, it takes a lot to create, but death or destruction is quick. Life is very, very fragile. And for us, it's short and fragile. Let's keep going. We spent a lot of time in Psalm. Let's get a little bit more. Let's go to Psalm 90. Go to Psalm 90. Let's start at 1, and we'll jump around a little bit. Psalm 90, verse 1, it says, Lord, this is a prayer of Moses. It says, Lord, thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or even thou hast formed the earth and the world. Even from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. Thou turnest man to destruction and saith, return ye children of men. For 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it is past, and as a watch in the night. Okay, are we getting that? Right? As a watch in the night. And then I'm going to skip around a little bit. I'm going to drop down to verse 9. It says, for all our days are passed away in thy wrath. We spend our years as a tale that is told, right? We past tense. All right, we past tense already. It's over. In verse 10, it said, the days of our years are 80 years and 10. Okay, so 60, 70, right? And then if by reason of strength they be 80 years, so 80 years old, yet is their strength labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off and we fly away. Very, very short, very, very fragile. Go to verse 12. So teach us to number our days that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. So you talk about numbering our days. You know what? Let's do that real quick. Let's divide, or let's times 90, okay, at 365. And you got 32,850 days. That doesn't sound like a lot, does it? That's how many days we have if you live to be 90. If you live to be 90, okay? I went 90. Right here, Moses, he went to 80, right? If you live to be 90, you got 32,850 days. But let's just be really, really generous, okay? So 365 times 100 years old. 36,500 days. I hope that is I hope that's sobering to you. That's how many days we have. 36,000 or 32,000? Whether if we live to be 90 or 100. Doesn't seem like you have that many days to spare, and I do. Now, we're not even guaranteed those days. That's just how many you have if you get to 90 or 100. 32,850 if you live to 90. Now, let me ask you, how many of those do you want to waste? How many of those do you want to waste? How much of that do you want to give to someone who doesn't have your best interests in mind? To give that to someone who may not have the best opinion of you? To spend that maybe hating somebody unjustly? How much or how many of those 32,000 days you want to waste? Let's go to James. Goes to James. James chapter 4. James chapter 4, 13 through 17. 13 says, Go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and continue there a year and buy and sell and get gain. Whereas you know not what shall be on tomorrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. What's your life? What are you talking about? Right? 15. For that ye ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. If the Lord will, we shall do this or that. He's just saying, don't get beside yourself. You don't even, next week is not promised to you. Oh, I'm going to do this. It's not promised. He says, so if the Lord will, okay, do this or that. 16. But now you rejoice in your boastings. All such rejoicing is evil, to be so self-assured that tomorrow your very next breath is guaranteed. 17. Therefore, to him that knoweth to do good and doeth not, to him it is sin. So he kind of gave us a clue what we should be doing right now. Okay, you don't know how much time you have, so you better get on the right track now. Go ahead, get into that narrow path, right? That straight gate. Go ahead, get on the path of righteousness, because you don't know when your time is up. You don't know when the last grain of sand falls through the hourglass on your life. Let's go to 1 Peter. And we're going to read 23 to 25. 23 says, being born again, not of corruptible seed, but of incorruptible, by the word of God, which liveth and abideth forever. For all flesh is as grass, and all the glory of man as the flower of grass. The grass withereth, and the flower thereof falleth away. But the word of the Lord endureth forever, and this is the word which by the gospel is preached unto you, that your life is short and fragile. I'm telling you this because I want you to do something with it. That's why I'm saying this. I want you to actually do something with your 32,000 or so days if the Lord wills. Again, there's no guarantee that we have that. There's no guarantee that I have that many days. I'm just saying if we're lucky to make it there. So what are you going to do with it? What are we going to do? So let's continue. Let's continue. Okay, just a couple more places. We're going to go ahead and, make this short and sweet for you. Let's go back. I said we were going to go back to Job, right? So we're going to go back to Job. I said that earlier. We're going to go back to Job. So let's go ahead and go to Job. We're going to go to 8 and 8. Job 8 and 8. And he says what? He says, for inquire, I pray thee, of the former age, and prepare thyself to the search of their fathers. Like that's where we're gonna, that's what's gonna end up happening, right? And verse 9, for we are but of yesterday and know nothing, because our days upon earth are as a shadow. That's in verse 9. Because we're nothing. It's over just that quick. Think about this. Think about this. You have a family member or a friend or someone or whatever. And you thought that they would be here today in this moment, and they're not here. Someone in your life, think about that for a second. Someone in your life whom you thought they were going to be here for a while, or you thought they were going to be here longer than what they were, and they're already gone. And how many times we go to a funeral or a wake or something, and we have that all too familiar refrain, going too soon. And it almost doesn't matter what age they attained. You're thinking gone too soon. And then in that moment, when you have to go to this into a funeral or a wake or something like that, you start thinking about your own mortality. You sober up for a minute. You start thinking about your own mortality, regardless of your attained age. It doesn't matter how old you are. You start thinking about, man, I could be next at any time. At any time. I had a 3-year stint where I had a family member pass every year. I went to a funeral. I think it was every year I went to a funeral. I didn't make the 2020 because of, the 2020 pandemic. I didn't make a particular funeral, but I still had a cousin who passed away. So he didn't make the year before. Another cousin the year before, an uncle or an aunt, or just my grandfather. Sometimes it takes something like that, the loss of a family member, for us to just wake up and number our days. Teach us to number our days. That's why I gave you that number. That's why I said that, right? I said, you know what? It says number our days. Let's take a look. How many days do we have if we reach 90 years old? 32,000. Let's continue. So we're over here in Job. I want to go to Job 42 because I did say that we were gonna finish up in Job. Okay, I want to finish up in Job because Job is like, hey, I got a few days. It's like a vapor. It's like a smoke. I'm not gonna live that long. So let's just see how long did Job live. 42, I want to do 16 and 17, right? This is at the very end, right? This is after Job got restored, right? After he got restored. Now let's take a look here. 16, it says what? And after this lived Job 140 years, and saw his sons and his sons' sons, even 4 generations. So Job died, being old and full of days. Being old and full of days. Right? So right there, 140. So Job was 140, and he thought that was pretty short. But he saw his sons and his sons' sons. So he saw his sons and his sons' sons. He saw his grandchildren. He even saw great grandchildren. He went to 4 generations after he's restored. And even then, he, as well as some of the other prophets and the apostles, our little life, that little 80 years old, 90 years old, even 140, not that much. Not that much time. So I ask you, how often do we take our days for granted? How often do you take your days for granted? How often do we just waste time, precious time, that you cannot get back? It is gone. What'd you do with it? What are you going to do with whatever number of days you have left? What are you going to do? What's the meaning of all this? What's the point? What's all this for? Let's get into it. Let's start finishing this thing up. Let's go to Ecclesiastes, sorry. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. We'll start at 2. His whole life. You can really read all of Ecclesiastes, and it'll really give you an idea of someone. Talk about Solomon, who went after and experienced all that life had to offer. Everything. He said it's just all vain. And then he gives us a conclusion. He went through, you just read all of Ecclesiastes. Just read all of that. We're not going to read it now. but read all of that. We're just going to read some, right? In verse 2, he says, vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit has a man of all his labor which he taketh under the sun, everything he does on this earth, right? One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abide forever. Like he's saying, okay, one generation after another, so your grandsons, so your sons' sons, right? And all that stuff, right? The sun also rises, and the sun goeth down, and hasten to his place where he arose. Okay, it's just all cyclical. It just comes and goes, right? And so I'm going to read a little bit more. Let's just read a little bit more. I was going to skip around, but I'm going to read a little bit more. The wind goeth towards the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returns again according to its circuits, to the path that it goes on, right? All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. All things are full of labor. Man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. The thing that has been, it is that shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It had been already of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come after. I, the preacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. And I gave my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven, or right here on the earth. I went to do everything. This sore travail had God given to the sons of man to be exercised therewith. We're supposed to, experience life, right? In 14, I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. All is vanity and vexation of spirit. Now, I want 18, but I'm going to go ahead and read through just the first chapter. That which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is wanting cannot be numbered. I commune with my own heart, saying, Lo, I am come to great estate, and have gotten more wisdom than all they that have been before me in Jerusalem. Yea, my heart had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I gave my heart to know wisdom, and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this also is vexation of spirit. Now let's see why he says this, right? In 18 he said, for in much knowledge, or much wisdom, I should say, is much grief. And he that increases knowledge increases sorrow. No. See, what he means by that is, you say today. So what I was saying earlier in the video, you're awake and you see the world a little differently. You see the world through biblical eyes. You see the world through spiritual eyes. When you see these wars, and when you see certain people do certain things, and when you see that Israel is disenfranchised and the things that are happening there, or when you see Israel in their folly and they're screwing up, and you see it's all biblical, it's all written. When you see prophecies unfolding and things like that, you know. When you see marriages are being destroyed and the roles are not being carried out, right? And it's just backwards and it's upside down. When you see those type of things being in a man's rule over, by their children, or you see rebellious wives, or you see guys who are not standing up and being the men that they should be, that they're expected to be. Instead of just wearing titles, oh, king this and queen that, but not really acting the part, not really fulfilling their role. When you see the other nations who know not God, who know not the true and living, who know not the biblical Yeshua. See, all this thing you understand what it means that the Sabbath is symbolic, it's a sign between him and his people. You know that. You know that your body is a temple, and you should not put anything unclean in that temple, because if you put something unclean in that temple, you already know the Holy Spirit is not going to dwell in you. So you don't put unclean things in your temple. So you have knowledge. You have much wisdom, and now you have much grief. It's like I said in the beginning, because ignorance is bliss when you don't know. How much happier were you when you did not know and you did not have all the responsibilities of righteousness? You were so much more happier, right? Ignorance is bliss. And how did you feel when you finally woke up, when the Most High, when the Ruach finally woke you up and you realize what you should be doing? You realize that you needed to repent. You need to start walking out in righteousness. It was sweet at first, and then it got bitter. Because you're like, oh, man, I got to get this right. What was I doing with my life before? What was going on? Oh, you see the difference? See, the more you know, the more sorrowful you get. And what about some of us, when your heart goes out to someone who you know that they are lost, but they're happy because they don't know. Ignorance is bliss. And you who have knowledge, you're full of grief. What about when you feel sorry when you see false prophets preaching something very unscriptural, preaching what thus says the Lord and the Lord said not? When they're doing those type of things, and it just breaks your heart because they have all these sheep out there and leading them astray. You are full of grief and full of sorrow. He says over here in the verse, for in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increases knowledge increases sorrow. Does it start to make sense now? Now that you know a little bit more Israel, a little bit more grief, a little bit more sorrow. But he did give us a conclusion of the whole matter. Solomon. When you go through, it seems like he's very bitter, and he's like, what's the use? What's the point of all this? What's the point? And he finishes up the whole book in 2 verses. I know he says, I went out into the world, I did this, I did that. In modern terms, he'd be like, hey, I've been to Vegas, partied hard. I've been to New York, partied hard. I did all that. I've been to New Orleans, I partied hard. I looked at all the accomplishments that man has done. You know, I've been to Dubai, and I saw all that. I went to the Maldives. I did all that. China, I did all. I traveled the world. I've done everything. I bought all the car. I got all the whips out there. I got Maseratis. I got Bentleys. I got Rolls Royces. I got Teslas. I got it all. BMWs, you name it. I got it all. And it's all vanity. It's all for nothing. What for? All the things that man do, all the things that he labor for, all the wealth that he tries to unmask. What's it all for? And then he concludes it. He puts it over here in Ecclesiastes 12, 13 and 14. And he sums it up quite well. He says, in 13, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear Yah and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. This is for all of us. This is the whole duty of man, right? For God shall bring every work into judgment. Everything that we do, you bring it into judgment. With every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. When I told you in the beginning, when I said on your tombstone, there may be your life, the day you were born and the day you pass. On your death certificate, when you were born, when you pass. On your tombstone, when you were born and when you died. And that little dash in between is all that matters. This is that dash in between. Right here. Ecclesiastes 12, 13 and 14 is that dash in between. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. And who are we standing before in the day of judgment? We have a short and fragile life. The day we're born and the day we die. And the thing we have control of is the dash in between. Hope someone got something out of the lesson. So until next time, Israel, search the scriptures and prove all things. Peace and shalom, Israel.